My husband died on a Tuesday, and the woman who killed him sat right beside me at his funeral. I thought that was the worst day of my life. But what happened the day after my husband's funeral was far worse. That's when my best friend, the one who held my hand as they lowered him into the ground, came to my house and told me he had a secret son with her. She even had a fake will. I was a widow mourning a man who, I thought, had betrayed me. She was right there with me, a ghost after my husband's funeral. She had all the tears, all the comforting words. The truth she didn't know was that my husband had left a chilling clue that she was a killer. If you want to see how I went from being a heartbroken victim to a hunter for justice, then like this video and leave a comment. And if you're ready to see how I finally got the justice my husband deserved, then you need to subscribe, because this isn't just a story after my husband's funeral. This is a story about the truth that came after. The rain was cold, a steady, miserable drizzle that matched the ache in my bones. I stood at the gravesite, my hand wrapped in my sister's, but even that felt like an ocean of space between us. I couldn't feel anything. Not the cold, not the stares, not the quiet sobs of Ethan's family. It was all a blur, a static hum in my ears. The world had gone quiet the moment the doctor told me my husband, the most vibrant, kind man I'd ever known, had collapsed from a massive aneurysm. He was just gone. 1 second, he was making me a cup of coffee. The next, his light was out. The only real face I could focus on was Maria's. She was my best friend, my ride or die since college. She stood on the other side of me, her hand resting on my shoulder, a constant, solid weight. She cried for both of us, her sobs racking her body in a way mine couldn't. I remember just staring at her, this beautiful, kind soul who was always there. I felt a pang of gratitude that I wasn't completely alone in this world. After all the people had gone and the last bouquet had been laid, she drove me home. She stayed the night, sitting on the sofa in silence as I stared into the emptiness of our apartment. The next morning, the silence was still there, but the raw edge of grief was starting to set in. It was a physical ache now, a heaviness in my chest. Maria came into the kitchen and sat across from me. She looked tired, her eyes red, but she had a strange kind of calmness about her that I couldn't quite place. I figured she was just trying to be strong for me. "Eliza," she began, her voice soft. "I have something I need to tell you. It's about Ethan." My heart hammered against my ribs. Had he left a message? A letter? I held my breath. "Please sit down." She took my hand. "It's about my son, Leo." I pulled my hand back, confused. "What about him?" "Leo was my godson. I love that boy like my own." Maria took a deep breath. "He's not my ex-husband's son. He's Ethan's." The words didn't register at first. They just hung in the air, a cruel, nonsensical joke. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but there was none. Maria's face was earnest, her eyes pleading. "I know this is hard to hear. We had a moment years ago. I know it was wrong, but it happened. And then Leo came. Ethan found out right before he died. He was so happy. Eliza, he wanted to do the right thing. He loved that boy so much. He changed his will." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. "This states that all of his assets are to be split between us for the benefit of his son. He wanted to provide for his family." The world spun. It felt like the ground was giving way beneath me. The man I had shared everything with, the man who I had spent years trying to have a baby with, had a child with my best friend. The shock was so profound that I couldn't even feel the pain yet. The silence was back, but this time, it was a screaming void. The betrayal was so immense, it was almost comical. I finally managed to speak, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. A new will. So soon after my husband's funeral, I couldn't believe the audacity. I couldn't believe the cruelty. Maria nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. He loved you, Eliza. He really did. He was just a good man trying to do the right thing. I just stared at her. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, hard stone in my stomach. The trust I had placed in her, in him, it was a lie. And it felt like the worst day of my life had just been replaced. After Maria left, the silence in the apartment screamed at me. I stood there, clutching that damn paper. My mind couldn't make sense of it. Ethan and Maria, a son. It was a sick joke, a betrayal so deep it felt like a physical assault. My breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. To understand what happened, to even begin to process the kind of person Maria turned out to be, you have to go back. Way back. Maria and I met our freshman year of college. We were roommates, two completely different people who somehow just clicked. I was the one with the 5-year plan, the one who spent Friday nights studying in the library. Maria was the one who lived in the moment, a little chaotic, a lot of fun. People were just drawn to her. She had this effortless charm, a way of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room. I adored her. She was my first real friend, my ride or die. She knew everything about me, the good, the bad, the embarrassing. I trusted her with my life. Our friendship was easy, or so I thought. Looking back, I see all the cracks I chose to ignore, the subtle digs that were disguised as jokes. Wow, you actually got an A, I guess. All that studying paid off. She'd say after I aced a test she barely passed. Or when I started dating a guy who was kind and steady. She'd say, he's nice. But isn't it a little boring? I always laughed it off. That was just Maria. I told myself, she was honest. She was real. She wasn't like all the fake people out there. After college, we stayed close. Even as our lives went in completely different directions, I got a job as an interior designer, slowly building my own business. My life was about order and building things, piece by piece. Maria's life was about chaos. She bounced from job to job, from relationship to relationship. She'd always call me in the middle of some crisis, and I'd always be there to talk her through it. I felt needed. I felt important. She was my sister, the one I never had. Then I met Ethan. He was the kind of man you read about in books, thoughtful, kind, impossibly generous. We met at a charity gala I was volunteering at. He outbid everyone on a painting of the city skyline, then walked straight over to me and gave it to me. I saw you admiring it all night, he said with a smile that just lit up his whole face. I swear my heart stopped. That was it. We were inseparable after that. He was everything I had ever wanted. He was my calm, my anchor. He was the most wonderful man in the world. Maria was thrilled. At least, that's what she said. When I called to tell her we were engaged, she was the first to shriek with delight. But then, it came, the casual remark, just a little bit off key. Wow, you guys are moving so fast. I just hope you know what you're doing. It was like a tiny, almost imperceptible prick. A little pinprick of jealousy. I brushed it off. We were getting married. I was happy. Nothing could touch us. We had the perfect life. Our home was everything I had ever dreamed of. A beautiful brownstone with great bones and a big garden. Our life was full of laughter, full of love. But there was a missing piece. For years, we tried to have a baby. We went through round after round of IVF, spent thousands of dollars, endured heartbreaking disappointments. It was the only shadow in our perfect world. Maria was a constant presence during that time. She was my rock. When a round failed, she was the first one to show up with ice cream and wine, ready to just sit and cry with me. "It's not fair, Eliza," she'd say, her eyes blazing with a familiar fury. "You deserve this more than anyone." Her support felt so genuine. It felt so real. She was the one person who truly understood the agony, the emotional and physical toll it took on us. Looking back, I see a pattern now. Whenever things were great for me, whenever I had a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness, she would find a way to make it about her. When I got my first big interior design client, she showed up at my studio with tears in her eyes, telling me her boyfriend had just broken up with her. I always put my own joy on hold to be there for her. I was her confidant, her rock, her lifeboat. Our lives became a twisted dance. I was the one with the success, the stable relationship, the perfect life. She was the one with the drama, the struggles, the chaos, and I always felt a responsibility to help her. My parents always told me I was too good-natured, too trusting. They always said Maria was bad news, but I never listened. I always told them she just needed more help, more support. She was my sister, my other half. I never in a million years thought that the reason she seemed so happy for me was because she knew all along that she was going to tear it all down. That the reason she always had a shoulder for me to cry on was because she was the one who had her hands on the string, pulling my life apart from the shadows. The woman who promised to always have my back was the one who was secretly stabbing me in it, all for the life she thought she deserved. All for my husband, and the baby she knew I could never have. The perfect life we had built wasn't a fragile thing. It was sturdy. It was strong. We had weathered a lot together, especially the silent, aching disappointment of our infertility struggles. We had decided to be enough for each other, that our love was big enough to fill every corner of our lives. It was our fortress, built on trust and a love so deep I couldn't even put it into words. But a fortress is only as strong as its foundation, and ours had an enemy hidden right inside the walls. It started so subtly, a headache, a fatigue that wouldn't go away. Ethan, who was never sick a day in his life, just wasn't himself. The doctors were baffled. They ran every test imaginable, but everything came back clean. Maybe it's stress, they'd say, or just a viral thing. It'll pass. But it didn't pass. He got weaker. His memory would slip. The man who could remember a dinner reservation from 6 months ago would forget where he left his car keys. It was terrifying. He'd look at me with such fear in his eyes, and I had no answers. My rock, my anchor, was starting to slip away. I was falling apart. The appointments, the tests, the constant worry it was a full-time job. I was losing clients. I couldn't focus on my designs, and I couldn't sleep. My world had shrunk to a single room, a single man, and a single, terrifying question why. That's when Maria stepped in. "Eliza, you look like a zombie," she said one afternoon, finding me on the couch with my head in my hands. "You can't do this alone." She was right. I couldn't. Maria was a registered nurse. She worked in a big hospital downtown, and her schedule was crazy, but she offered to help. Let me manage the appointments. She said, let me talk to the doctors. I speak their language. It was like she was sent from heaven. I was so exhausted and so grateful. I handed over control without a second thought. I put all my faith in her. She was my angel. She was a godsend. And she was good at it. She'd call me with updates, explaining the complex medical jargon in a way I could understand. She'd show up with files organized in a binder, with lists of questions for the doctors. She made it seem like she was fighting alongside me. The doctors are stumped. She'd tell me, her voice filled with a fake-sounding concern. They've never seen anything like this. It's like his body is just giving up. Looking back now, I can see the cracks in her performance. The way she'd managed to show up right before a doctor's appointment so she could be the one to talk to them. The way she'd insist on giving Ethan his medication herself, just to make sure he takes it correctly. The way she'd talk to him in a low, soothing voice, as if she were the only one who truly understood him. She started making little comments. He seems more alert when I'm here. Doesn't he or you look so worn out? Eliza, maybe you should go rest. I'll sit with him. I'd go to bed, utterly exhausted, and wake up to her in the living room, reading a book, just in case. I was so grateful, so utterly reliant on her, that I never questioned it. Sometimes, a weird thought would flicker through my mind, like a tiny, almost imperceptible whisper. A few times, I'd see a look on Ethan's face when Maria was in the room, a look of confusion, of fear, even. But I'd always dismiss it. He was sick. He was just tired. I was overthinking. It was impossible to believe anything else. Maria was my friend. She was our lifeline. Ethan's health continued to decline. He became frail, his once strong body looking so tired and worn out. The light in his eyes, the same one that had caught my attention at that charity gala, was fading. He knew it too. We both knew we were on borrowed time. We would lie in bed, just holding each other, not needing to speak. There were no more questions, just the quiet, aching acceptance. One night, he was restless. He was in and out of a feverish sleep, muttering things I couldn't understand. Maria was in the living room, dozing, as usual. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding his hand. He woke up suddenly, his eyes wide and clear for the first time in weeks. He looked at me with such intensity, as if he were trying to tell me a million things at once. He squeezed my hand, a weak but purposeful grip. He pointed to a small, unassuming blue box charm on my keychain, the one he'd given me years ago, a silly little souvenir from a trip we'd taken. I remember him telling me it was our secret box, for all our little memories. The blue box. He rasped, his voice barely a whisper. He looked at the box, then back at me, his eyes begging me to understand. What is it? Honey, I asked, my voice trembling. He tried to speak again, his eyes darting to the bedroom door, then back to me. His voice was hoarse, a choked sob. He reached up, his fingers weakly tracing the outline of my face. Trust me, Eliza, he whispered. You have to trust me. His eyes began to roll back into his head. I screamed for Maria. She rushed in, but it was too late. He was gone. His hand went limp in mine, the warmth draining from his fingers. The light in his eyes, my beautiful light, was finally out. I looked at the little blue box on my keychain. His last message. A pointless, heartbreaking mystery. I had no idea that his last words weren't about love, but a warning. A warning about the woman who had just walked into the room. A warning about the secret she was hiding. A secret that had just cost him his life. After he was gone. After Maria left. The silence that had felt like a blanket of grief now felt like a living thing. A predator in my own home. I was a ghost in my own life. I walked from the living room, where Maria had dropped her bomb, to our bedroom. Everything was exactly as we'd left it that Tuesday morning. The coffee cup still on the nightstand, his scent still on his pillow. And there I was, a widow, reeling from the twin shock of a death I couldn't comprehend and a betrayal I couldn't believe. I stood in the middle of the room, and for the first time, the tears came. But they weren't for Ethan. They were for me, for the 10 years of my life that felt like they had just been erased. Maria's words echoed in my head. He was so happy. He wanted to do the right thing. Her voice, once my comfort, now sounded like a viper's hiss. It was all a lie, a sick, twisted, impossible lie. My mind, numb from grief, suddenly snapped into focus. A tiny, nagging thought, a desperate flicker of a memory. It wasn't about the will. It was about Ethan, his last words, the blue box. I walked over to my bedside table, my hands trembling. There, on the wooden surface, sat my keychain. The little blue box charm was right where it had always been. It felt warm in my palm. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open the small, hinged box. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. But there was nothing inside. Nothing but a memory. I almost gave up. Maybe it was just his fever talking. Maybe it was a hallucination. But I knew him. He never said anything without a reason. He was always so careful. My eyes drifted to my closet, and I remembered a conversation we'd had years ago. He joked about his disaster preparation kit, a place where he kept all his important documents in case of an emergency. He'd laughed, calling himself a paranoid lawyer, but I knew him. He was just thoughtful. He was just careful. I ran to the closet, fumbling with the handle. Inside, pushed all the way to the back, was a dusty old box, a cheap, cardboard box I'd meant to throw out 100 times. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. I tore the tape off and threw the lid open. Inside, among some old love letters and a faded photograph of us on our first date, was a stack of papers, and on top of the stack, there was a sealed envelope. On it, in his perfect handwriting, were 2 words for Eliza. My hands flew to the papers, scanning them frantically, and there it was. Not a will. Something else. A medical document. My eyes darted across the page, taking in the clinical language, the dates, the diagnosis, a successful vasectomy, performed 3 years ago. 3 years before Maria's son was even conceived. My breath hitched in my throat. I read it again and again, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't. It was real. Signed by a doctor. Not a lie. Not a mistake. Maria's entire story, her entire cruel performance, was built on an impossible foundation. The grief was gone. Completely. Replaced by a cold, searing rage that was so pure. It felt like fire in my veins. My hands, which had been shaking with grief just moments before, were now steady, clutching the paper that held all the power. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was angry. I was furious. She didn't just lie to me about having a baby with my husband. She had the audacity to lie to me about the life we had built, the life where we both knew we couldn't have a child. She had the audacity to use my heartbreak against me, to weaponize my deepest sorrow, to look me in the eye and sell me a story she knew was biologically, physically impossible. The kind, heartbroken best friend I thought I had was a monster. And then I saw it. Tucked underneath the medical documents was an old phone. It was his. The phone he'd used before he got his latest upgrade. He always kept his old electronics, a strange habit of his. I looked at the little screen. It was cracked, but it still lit up. My mind raced. Why was this phone here? Why would he keep this with his most important documents? Why did he tell me to find it? I didn't know it then, but this was the moment everything changed. I was no longer a widow. I was no longer a heartbroken victim. I was a woman with a mission. And the first thing I was going to do was find out why my best friend had gone from lying about a baby to killing my husband. After I found the documents, after I read the word vasectomy on that sterile piece of paper, my grief was gone. Not gone as in healed, but gone as in it was a distant memory replaced by something new and raw and powerful rage. A fury so hot it felt like it could burn through my skin. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was hunting. Maria hadn't just lied to me. She had mocked me. She had used the most painful thing in my life against me. She had built a lie on top of the one single truth that only Ethan and I shared, the only truth that made her entire story impossible. My hands, which had trembled in grief, were now steady as I picked up the old phone from the box. This wasn't just a piece of technology. It was Ethan's last hope. His final desperate message to me. I took it straight to a small electronics shop downtown, the kind of place with an older guy who just fixes things. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at the cracked screen, the old model, and nodded. "Let me see what I can do," he said. The next 24 hours were a living hell. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just sat on the couch, replaying every moment with Maria in my head, every hug, every kind word, every time she told me she loved me. It was all a performance, a calculated, soulless act. I got the call the next day. The phone was alive. The guy had managed to recover everything. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. It was just a regular phone, filled with boring things, old work emails, pictures of our trips. So much of our life together was on there. A life Maria wanted to claim. I scrolled through pictures of us, of Ethan laughing, of him with the city skyline in the background, the same skyline as the painting that brought us together. He was so alive in those photos. It made my heart ache. And then I saw it. A folder, labeled important. I opened it, my heart pounding. Inside, there were no documents, just a series of photos. Blurry photos. Photos of our bathroom, of our bedroom. It looked like he had been taking them in secret. And then I saw the last one. It was a selfie. Ethan looked pale and tired, but his eyes were so clear, so urgent. And in the background, just out of focus, was a hand reaching for his medication bottle. And on that hand was a ring. The simple silver ring Maria had worn for years. My best friend. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. My hands felt cold, clammy. I was staring into the eyes of a dying man. I stared at the screen, a nauseous feeling rising up in my throat. He was trying to tell me. He was trying to show me what she had done. I went back to the voice recordings. Just a long list of them. Mostly his memos to himself. To remember things for work. I played them one by one, listening to his voice. the voice I missed more than anything in the world. It was comforting until it wasn't. I hit play on the last file. It was a short recording, filled with static and a faint coughing. "Eliza," he whispered, his voice weak. "Maria. She's here. She said she's just checking in on me." I held my breath. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "I think she's changing the medication. I saw her." His voice trailed off into a ragged gasp. Then another voice, softer, closer. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'm just making sure you're taking the right dose." It was Maria. So gentle, so kind. Then I heard a click, and his voice was back, a choked, terrified whisper. "Eliza, she's killing me. She's changing the labels. You have to find the box." And then the audio cut out. Just like that. Nothing but static. My world went silent. I just sat there, the phone in my hand, tears streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unfiltered horror, the kind of horror that makes your blood run cold. My beautiful husband didn't die of an aneurysm. He was murdered. He was murdered by my best friend, the woman who sat by my side at his funeral, the woman who held my hand as they lowered him into the ground. And then I found one more thing, a folder, hidden deep in the phone's memory. It was filled with emails between Maria and her doctor. The dates were recent, all talking about her severe anxiety and depression. One of them mentioned how she had been struggling to cope with her unrequited love for a married man. It wasn't just about money, it was about obsession. A twisted, dark obsession that had been simmering for years, right under my nose. Maria didn't want Ethan's money. She wanted his life. And when she couldn't have it, she took it away from both of us. The anger was back, fiercer than ever. I wasn't just hunting for answers anymore. I was hunting for justice. After I pieced it all together, after I listened to that voice, my grief turned into a new kind of power. It was cold. It was steady. It was the absolute clarity of a woman with nothing left to lose. I wasn't just grieving for my husband anymore. I was fighting for him. I was going to get justice. I went home. The apartment, once a place of silence and grief, was now a crime scene in my mind. Every corner, every object held a memory of her. The sofa where she had comforted me, the kitchen where she had made me tea. I picked up the phone, my hand steady. "Maria," I said, my voice calm. It sounded so strange, so detached. "It's me," she answered immediately. "Eliza, are you okay? I was just about to call you." "I'm fine," I said. "Look, I've been thinking about what you said, about the will, and I'm just so lost. I think I need to give you the money. I can't deal with it anymore." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, a pause filled with a triumphant intake of breath. "Oh, Eliza, I knew you'd come around. I told you, I'm just trying to do what's best for his son, for his legacy." Her words made me sick. I squeezed my eyes shut. "Can you come over? We can sort out the paperwork. I just want this to be over. I'll be right there," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Just stay strong." Okay, I hung up the phone and got to work. My hands didn't shake. They were focused and efficient. I set up my laptop in the living room, propped up on a stack of books, making sure the camera was pointed directly at the sofa. I placed a small, discreet audio recorder on the coffee table. I wasn't just the grieving widow anymore. I was a hunter setting a trap. She arrived 30 minutes later, looking polished and confident. Wearing a brand new jacket I hadn't seen before, she gave me a tight, patronizing hug and sat down on the sofa, a triumphant look on her face. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Eliza," she said, her voice a little too sweet. "I knew you'd see it was the right thing to do. This is what Ethan wanted." I just looked at her, my face a blank slate. Her beautiful, effortless smile. The same smile I'd always envied. The same smile I'd always loved. It was a mask. A perfect, beautiful mask hiding a monster. "I know what Ethan wanted," I said, my voice quiet. "And it wasn't this." Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean you know what I mean?" "Maria," I said, placing a manila folder on the coffee table. She glanced at it, her eyes narrowing. She reached for it, but I put my hand on top of it, stopping her. "Before we talk about the will," I said, "I want to talk about something else." Her confidence started to ebb away, replaced by a flicker of fear. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled my phone out and placed it on the table. "Ethan and I had a secret. We didn't tell anyone, not even you, because it was ours." I watched her face, searching for a reaction. Nothing. Just a blank, cold mask. 3 years ago, Ethan had a vasectomy. "So, you tell me, Maria, how could he have a son with you?" The color drained from her face. She stared at the medical documents in the folder, her eyes wide with panic. The facade of sympathy and grief finally cracked. How did you... And that's not all," I said, my voice getting stronger, colder. I held up the old phone, its cracked screen glowing. "This is Ethan's phone. The last message on it was for me." Her face went from pale to ghostly white. She lunged for the phone, but I was faster. I hit play. The room filled with the sound of his voice. My sweet, beautiful husband's voice, raspy and weak. "Eliza. Maria. She's changing the medication. She's killing me." Maria's face twisted into a grotesque mask of rage and terror. "That's not true. I didn't do that." "You're lying." I calmly hit play on the next recording, the last recording on the phone. It was her voice. A voice I had loved. A voice I had trusted with my life. Her soothing, fake kind voice telling him, "Don't worry, Ethan. I'm just making sure you're taking the right dose." And then his final gasp. She lunged at me. She screamed my name, her face contorted with pure hatred. "You were always the lucky one, Eliza. You had everything I deserved him. I deserved his life." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, finally seeing her for who she truly was. A monster, a pathetic, desperate monster. I had been a grieving widow, but now I was a witness to a murder. I held up the phone. I hit play. I watched her crumble. She was finished. She was gone. And so was the pain of her betrayal. The silence after she was gone was the first real silence I had experienced since the day Ethan died. It wasn't the silence of grief anymore. It was the silence of justice. It was the silence of victory. The police took her away, screaming my name, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. And then the door closed, and I was alone. But this time, being alone didn't feel lonely. The legal process was a blur. The evidence was irrefutable. Her own recorded confession, the medical documents that proved she had lied about her son, and the audio recording of Ethan's last words. The district attorney's office was incredible. They were so supportive, so dedicated to getting justice for Ethan. Maria was charged with murder. Her life, the life she had tried to steal from me, was over. But mine was just beginning. I spent the next few months doing the only thing I could, healing. The therapy I had started after Ethan's death became a lifeline. I talked through all of it. The years of quiet betrayal, the subtle jabs, the manipulation that had been a part of my life for so long. My therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me understand that a part of me was always enabling Maria, always giving her a stage to perform her drama on. I had been so focused on being a good friend, on being a good person, that I had lost sight of my own boundaries. The grief for Ethan was still there, a constant companion, but it was no longer heavy. It was a part of me, a reminder of the beautiful love we had. But the anger for Maria, that was the fire that had finally given me the strength to heal. I found a new purpose. Ethan's death was a senseless act of violence, but I could do something about it. I established the Ethan James Foundation. Its mission was to provide funding for research into rare and undiagnosed illnesses, to help families like mine who are lost in a confusing medical system. It gave me something to wake up for in the morning. It gave me a way to honor the man I loved, to keep his memory alive by helping others. I also went back to my work. My interior design firm had been on hold for too long. My first project was our own home. I changed everything. I removed the sofa where Maria had told her lies. I painted the walls. I got new furniture. I filled the house with life and color and light, erasing every single trace of her. I was creating a new space, not just for myself, but for the new life I was building. My life is different now. I'm not the same person I was. I'm stronger. I'm more cautious. I've learned that not all betrayals have to be fatal, but that they all require you to build stronger boundaries. Maria taught me that family is not just about blood, but about trust and respect. She taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones you need to protect yourself from. But most importantly, she taught me that a triumph isn't about getting revenge. It's about finding peace, about finding a way to heal, and about building a new life with a love that can never be destroyed. It wasn't an easy journey. There were days when I wanted to give up, days when the pain felt like too much to bear, but every time, I'd remember Ethan's last words. You have to trust me. And I did. I trusted him to lead me to the truth, and he did. His love didn't end when he died. It guided me. It protected me. It gave me the strength to fight for the truth and to find the kind of peace that no one, not even a monster, could ever take away from me. If you've ever felt like your pain was invisible, like your trust was taken for granted, or like your story didn't matter, then I want you to know that it does. Your story has the power to heal not just you, but others. If you're ready to start your own healing journey, to learn how to find your own strength and get justice for the pain you've been through, then I want you to join my community. We're a family of survivors, and we're here to help each other grow. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and leave a comment below to share your experience with betrayal and what you did to overcome it. And if you want to be a part of our community of strong, resilient survivors, then you have to subscribe, because our story isn't over. Our journey is just beginning.